Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining today. I'm Kim.
And I'm Ben.
And I'm Greg.
And we're from Hunger for Technologies.
So we had a successful first run of Webex Wednesdays at 1. I think we all can take a deep breath and, relax a little bit. We did it once. That's great. This time we're a little less worked up to make sure it goes well, which is nice. But it went really well, and I'm hoping we can keep that going. So quick overview of what is this. This is a quick hit meeting every Webex Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard. You guys can jump in and see us. You can ask us questions. We're going to follow a similar format, though, every time. The first half is going to be prepared content. It might just be a really small bite, 2 or 3 tips and tricks, 5 minutes. It might be a little bit larger, 10 to 15 minutes. The second half is going to be open general Q&A, which means anybody who has any questions, whether it's about the topic that we specifically covered today, whether it's about Webex or even about other things, just anything you guys want us to cover. I like this format a lot because I'm that guy who likes to sit in the audience, and I don't think my question is important enough to have everybody stop and listen to the answers. So I tend to be quiet. I'm trying to ask you to not be me because I recognize that even though I'm the quiet one, I do get a lot of value from the questions getting answered because they're real questions and I've had that same problem. So that's a big pitch to you guys. Don't be shy in the Q&A. It really helps provide value. So I also just want to quickly cover the high concept here, which is I've been in the industry for about 5 years covering video conferencing. I'm still surprised at the number of companies who need to be explained why video conference hosting is a value to them, and that every organization from a 2-person company to a 2,000-person company, I have customers in both scenarios, have a reason to have at a minimum a $25 a month, a $30 a month license, so at least one person can host at the very small end of this, all the way up to large, big contracts that get even cheaper per user per month. So all that aside, please do put in comments, and let's get over to our housekeeping with Kim.
Like Greg said, we want you to comment. So we want this to be super interactive. But in order to comment on Facebook, you need to be logged in with your Facebook account. On YouTube to comment, you need to be logged in with your YouTube account. And if you're watching on our website, you need to have a Twitch account. And if you don't already have a Twitch account, you can create one very quickly. So just make sure you have an account and send those comments our way.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Kim. Today's topic, what we're going to be going over is how to personalize your preferences as a Webex host. So let's get started.
Actually, Ben, before we jump in, I'm going to cover the roles real quick. So Ben, you're driving today. I'm going to be asking questions. Kim's watching the Q&A. For everybody out there, your job is to put in comments. Don't hold them till the end. Feel free to just ask as soon as something pops up. Cool, Ben.
Perfect.
Let's get started.
Thanks, Greg. All right, let's do it. All right, so one of the first things I wanted to cover is how do I get to this point? So if you are a Webex customer currently, what you should be able to do is type in, usually the format is companyname.webex.com. And once you type that in and you press enter, it's going to ask you to sign in the top right-hand side of the page. Once you sign in, it should look similar to what my layout is. It may be slightly different, but what we're going to do from here is go to our preferences section. And what we're going to cover today is just some personal preferences in your personal area as a Webex host. So if you have a license, you can come in here and you can update this and you can adjust it. One of the biggest things that I get asked on the general page is some customers that we work with have offices throughout the United States. So even though the company, their main office is in Eastern Standard Time, someone else on their team might be in Central, someone else might be in Pacific. So as a personal host and with your own host license, you can come in and you can change your time zone to set it to what your time zone is so that you're not using that Central time zone even though you're in Eastern. So usually that's really helpful for people. And then every once in a while too, we'll get someone who wants to use one of the other foreign languages too. So you can set it up if you're a global organization, you can set it up to use different language too if that's where you primarily do business. All right, from here, we're going to go into, and one important thing too before we get started on the next tab over is each time you make updates, make sure that you save it at the bottom before you move on to the next section. Otherwise, it's not going to save and you're going to have to go back and redo it.
That one's gotten me a few times.
It's gotten me a few times too.
Yeah.
So from here, 2 ways that you can set up your personal room. The first way is you can set it up as your first and last name, personal room. You can also, if you're sharing it with some people on your team, set the personal room up to be, marketing personal room or marketing room. And then you can use that as your personal room name if you have a couple people who are sharing that.
I have
same
had
thing with
customers, Ben, have you ever had somebody do this where they're saying, hey, so I send out an invite and the person joining pops in and they get a thing that pops up on Webex that says, like, welcome to Ben Myslinski's personal room. Have you ever had anybody complain that feels too intimate?
Yeah, some people don't like that. So
Yeah.
you can change the name to whatever you like. One thing that is important is once you set it, it's best not to go back in and change it that often, because if I change this, usually I change my personal room link too. And then what happens is any meetings that I have scheduled out in advance, I need to reschedule. So that's usually pretty simple. You just go back into your calendar and sign out of the desktop application, sign back in, and then drop that new meeting link in. But a lot of times I've had customers call me and say, hey, I changed my personal room link and now I can't get in. And the customer is saying that I'm not in the meeting, but I'm in the meeting. And then I go in and I look at it and yep, they're using an old personal room link which no longer exists. And the customer's going to that and it's saying this isn't an actual room. So then people are like, oh man, you even told us that in training. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's okay.
I've made that mistake. It sucks. You've got meetings scheduled. You have to reschedule them if you change that personal room link. So usually tell them, pick it once and stay with it. Also, if you're your company admin, you can make it so that that link to change is not allowed to be changed by regular users logging in. So like if you're a user and you see this where Ben's able to change the end there, if you're not able to, it's because the global admin settings are set up to not allow end users to make that change. Your organization is going to want to decide what they would rather. But most organizations I've worked with leave that open to the end user. So that's on you guys to decide.
Yeah, and then I did something here too is, so I put my host pin before we did this to my birth date year, which is a no-no. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I put it in there so that people could see. So my host pin right now is 1986. So for security purposes, you should never have your host pin be your birth year or birth date or anything like that, because it's too easy to guess. And someone could potentially open up your room and use that. And we've seen people get charges on their account depending on what type of license they have. And someone in China has access to your account and they're using it to pretend to be you. So just an FYI. For security reasons, make sure that you have a random number preferentially, or someone else that isn't easily trackable. All right. And then another point to that is automatically locking your room. So most people have heard about Zoom bombing, where people were able to come in and just blast pornographic images or racist images on people's Webexes all throughout the country. Huge security problem, huge security risk. So in Webex, you don't have to have that happen for numerous reasons. One of those is it's always been able to be a locked feature. So I can either manually lock it inside of Webex, or I can set it up here and click automatically lock my room. And you can select how many minutes you want it to lock after the meeting starts. You can have it lock automatically as soon as the meeting starts, or you can come in and select a 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, or 20. As an administrator, you can also, we'll probably cover this at a later date, but you can also push that out site-wide for everyone in your organization. So that's another nice thing too. And
Ben,
then what will happen is...
What do you normally set yours to?
Honestly, because I'm not really super worried about people getting into my meetings. It's happened one time and I booted them and I know the technology really well.
Yeah.
I don't have it set. But most of the time for customers, I recommend that they automatically set it for at least 10 minutes. And some of them, if you have stricter restrictions, like if you're a healthcare organization, probably automatically lock.
Yeah.
And then you can manually admit people.
I do mine at 10 minutes, but it's not so much because I'm worried about anybody randomly hopping in. It's more often that experience where I've got a meeting at 10, it ends at 10:30. I've got another meeting starting at 10:30, and someone shows up early. They have that awkward experience where, in the real world, they can go into the lobby. This is mimicking that idea of you can see someone's waiting in your lobby instead of them accidentally popping right into your meeting room. And the other reason is because I always forget to lock my room. So this is nice because the first 10 minutes, anybody can get in, and then I'm now running my meeting, not paying attention, and I've forgotten about it. This will hop in and be like, oh, it's 10 minutes in. We're going to lock it so that by the end of your meeting, you don't have that awkward exchange where someone accidentally pops in. That's why I like 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And for every organization, it's probably going to differ. There's no wrong way to do it. The reason I do it is I like to just manually have control over it. And a lot of times I don't notice that if I'm sharing my screen and someone logs into my room a little bit later, then I have to stop sharing my screen and then see them pop up there. So for me, I just prefer to lock it manually. But there's no wrong way to do it. And it really depends on what your personal preference is. The nice thing is if you do have it automatically lock immediately, I can see each individual person as they log in, and I can admit whoever I need to, and I can say, oh, I don't know who this person is, and keep them in the lobby so that they don't get into the session. It is really helpful. I've had some of my other customers talk to me about, oh, it's really nice because we had a huge meeting and we locked the room automatically, but we had posted the link to the personal room on our public page. And so there were a couple of people who were trying to do something similar to what you can do with Zoom and go and do a Zoom bomb on a Webex session. They were unable to because of some of those security settings.
I think the important message is if you're security conscious at all, you should recommend internal policy or set global policy to automatically lock immediately. The downside is it's just a little more annoying as the host to have to let people in.
Yeah, a little bit more annoying, but you can have peace of mind because you know that people aren't going to get onto your session that shouldn't be there. So from here, another thing that I like to is there's a notification setting where I can have it notify me by email when someone enters my personal room lobby. The nice thing about this is a lot of the customers that I work with, I can either be talking to and they're in their car or they're going from one meeting to another. Sometimes they'll write down Thursday meeting with Ben and Webex, and they've already been in my personal room, so they can just go in and get to my link and get on there. So sometimes what will happen is someone will actually try to join a Thursday before our actual meeting, and it'll say, so-and-so is waiting in your personal room lobby. And it's nice for me to just see that, send them a message and say, hey, looks like you joined, a week early. And then just, a little LOL. And we're actually doing it next week. And they're like, oh, thanks so much for letting me know. So I didn't have to wait in your room for the next 20 minutes. I think
that's a better example than the one I usually give for this. I always talk about how this has saved me a number of times where I get busy doing something. I forgot that I have a meeting. I'm not paying attention, and I have an email pop up, and I'm like, oh, shoot, it's 1:03. I'm supposed to be in a meeting. Yeah. This has saved me more than once.
Yeah, and that's the other reason. Yep, and that's a good other reason too. Both of those things have happened to me, so I use it for one of those two reasons. And it's nice though, because sometimes you'll be talking to someone in a meeting and you'll be like, oh, this meeting's gone over a little bit longer than I thought. And I get the little pop-up that says someone's waiting in your personal room lobby. And then I say, okay, I got to go to this next meeting. And then I can head over to it too. So yeah. I like it for both those reasons. I recommend everyone sets that setting and checkmarks that box.
Me too.
As far as alternate hosts, this is something that is incredibly important in today's world. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're a CEO of a company and you want other people to host meetings for you or be able to start a session on your behalf. We have it set up as an organization where everyone who has a host account on our site is able to go in and start a personal meeting for anyone. So if I had a meeting, Kim or Greg could also go in and start that meeting for me. It's another reason where if I'm running late from something or if one of them are running late from something, they can just send me a message and I can go in and start either of their rooms or they can start my room. You can also, if you don't like that, where everyone in your organization has that ability, you can choose specific people. One thing that's important to note: people do have to be added inside your Control Hub portal, even if they don't have an assigned license, in order for us to assign them. So you can add them as a user in there, and you don't have to technically check mark the box to give them access to WebEx meetings, but they should be able to continue to host meetings and open up meetings on your behalf. All right, and then always make sure as you go through these, save, and then you can go to the next tab. Some of these things I'm not going to go too in depth with, but as far as audio connection, always leave this as WebEx audio, and you can display global call-in numbers to attendees only if you're doing international business. If you're not, it's not something you need to worry about. Personal preferences for me, I personally like not having the beeping or the announcing names when people are joining or ending and hopping off of a call, because I don't like to hear beep, 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 beep in my ear as I'm trying to talk to people, especially if you have a large group of people who some of them are joining late, and they're coming on at all different times and they're hopping off because some of them have to go to other meetings. You keep getting that constant beep, 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 beep as they join and as they end. And we were actually on a large meeting for something a couple years ago, Greg and I, and these young ladies were interns and actually set the settings to announce name. So it was
like
I think there was
people on that call.
Yeah, 900 plus people.
Yeah.
Not for long, but we kept hearing, Ben has joined the meeting. Ben has left the meeting. Greg has joined the meeting. Ben has left the meeting.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. And then you saw massive amounts of people dropping and saying, "This is a bad experience." So just I tell that story so that you don't ever have to do that.
Yeah, Ben, I tell most people the
in a
same
real
thing.
meeting.
Don't do the announce
Ever.
unless
Never
you
do it.
really mean it.
Yeah. And just be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Default call-in numbers, I can set some of these. Most of this stuff I would leave how it is. This is something that your administrator can update also in the admin portal and push out some different call-in numbers, and then you can kind of select. The one nice thing is if you do business with someone in certain countries, you can set up, a U.S. toll call-in number and a call-in number for another area of the world that, sometimes we have customers who only do business with people in Mexico, so they have a U.S. call-in number, and then they have a number that someone can call in from Mexico. So that's another nice thing.
So
if you're doing,
I haven't used that one. Is that like, so I set up the primary and secondary there, first number, second number. Everybody who goes to my personal room sees that, or is it only for what displays to me?
Yeah, it's everyone who joins one of your meetings will actually be able to see those two options. So right now ours is set. We have just one default call-in number. But if you're not doing international business and you wanted to see, let's say you just work with one other country and it's not Canada, then you would put, we do business with Mexico and we have, 80% of our calls are in the United States and 20% are in Mexico, then I could set that as a secondary number.
That's cool.
And then as far as call-in numbers, I have an office phone that routes to my cell phone. So my office phone isn't in here. I almost always use my cell phone as my call-in number. So that's the one that calls me. And you can set both if you want, if you're using them regularly, or if you have one that you prefer over others, then when you go into the meeting and you drop down and use that call me section, it's going to have that number saved, and you're going to just be able to click it and then join your meeting and you'll be in. Audio pin, same thing here. I did the same thing. The reason I did it here too is I wanted it to match what my personal room pin is. So my audio pin here, basically, if someone, the main place that this is used is if someone is calling in from their phone and opening up their meeting over their phone, it's going to prompt you to use this pin as well. It's just kind of a secondary level of authentication where the host is using a phone. So that's what it's for. But it should be the same as what your personal room PIN is, just so that there's no problems there.
Easier.
A lot of times people will do something and the two are different. Then they call me and they say, I don't understand what's going on. I'm trying to open up my personal room and their audio PIN is different than their personal room PIN. And then it gives them a problem. So just so you know. Let's see here. If you have a video system, you can tie that video system into your Webex, and off to the bottom left-hand side when you're joining, there's like a video icon where you can actually select those endpoints. This one is the closest to where I work, so it's the only one in here. So I have it saved in there. I always tell people that, yeah, we have other video endpoints, but this is the only one that I use primarily, so I don't save the others. And then obviously, always make sure you save. We'll go to the next page here. Meeting type, that's not super important for what we're going to be talking about here today. If you're sending out invites from Webex, you can also have it send an invitation copy to yourself. Most of the time, if you're using your Outlook calendar or Google or something, you can actually send the invites out from inside of that service. So that's also another thing that's not very important. Sharing meeting content, I have it set up so any of my sessions that I do gets pre-recorded and sends out a copy to everyone who's on there. So it's basically going to share the meeting highlights, recording, transcript with the meeting participants, invitees, and allows them to make edits if I have that setting set up.
So Ben, every meeting you're on automatically records?
So basically, if I record, it automatically shares that recording with the attendees.
Yep.
And then we have certain settings set up so that it's basically just sharing the recording with them, and they can enter a password and get access to it, and then they can rewind it, fast forward, and that kind of stuff.
I don't have mine turned on, but I've seen, like, after I'm in a meeting with you and we've recorded, it actually is quite nice not to have to wait for it to show up, then send the recording out. And most often, nobody's going to be offended if they were in the meeting and they receive automatically recording. So it's warming me. I'm warming to it.
Yeah, so the reason I did it was because I do a lot of demos, a lot of trainings, and a lot of different meetings with customers that I need to record it so that they have a copy that they can access later. And if I was doing that in the past, I was continually having to check my recording section to see if the recording was available, and it was costing me a lot of time.
Yeah.
So for efficiency purposes, I chose to do it this way as soon as it was available. And I haven't really ever looked back. And then I always tell people, like, hey, if you don't get a copy of the recording within a couple hours, send me a message and I'll make sure you get it. So then that way they know that too. If there's ever an error on the Webex side, then I can send it out to them manually too. And then this ties into the ability for people to host meetings and open up meetings on your behalf. I also have Kim and Hannah, who's on our team, set up so that they can actually schedule meetings and drop my personal meeting room link in. The reason that this is important is sometimes I will say, hey, Kim, Hannah, can you guys set up a meeting with so-and-so? And if they set it up in their room, then we have to transfer like host privileges from them to me. And then I still don't have some of the same privileges in their room as I do in my own. So I prefer to do it in my own so I can show everything. And I can also save that session and the recording automatically gets sent out, where I think their settings are also set up a little bit different. The nice thing about this too is then we go in and we go into Outlook. So if you see here, it just basically says when you're setting up these scheduling permissions, make sure that you select the hosts as delegates and grant them access to your calendar. So you just need to go into your Outlook calendar too and give those people access to schedule on behalf. And once they have that, then they can schedule meetings on your behalf and drop in your personal room PIN.
I most commonly bump into this with, the classic scenario of an executive has an assistant who manages their calendar, and It's kind of a goofy thing, but in order to set it up, if you have Outlook and you have Webex and you want the executive to not have to worry about scheduling, you want the assistant to handle it, you have to go set up an Outlook that the assistant has rights to manage that calendar. And then you have to go set up one time here in that scheduling section that the assistant has the rights to manage the Webex portion as well. And then everything's real clean.
Yeah, and what I normally recommend people do too is if they set it up in the scheduling section, make sure that that person also has access to start meetings on your behalf, because a lot of times those same people need to start a meeting and let someone know, hey, the CEO of this is, our company is running a little bit late, but I'm hopping on. Is there anything that you guys talked about that I can prepare, documents that I can deliver, share to you? And then he'll be on like 5-10 minutes. So you can do that easily by setting up those two settings. And then recording transcripts is a newer feature. I will say that Cisco purchased a company that is working on improving their transcription services. So it's going to be much better, I would assume, in the next year. Right now, it's just kind of new. So there are some errors in it, but like with any new product and transcription service, you're going to get not 100% accurate results, but it is a work in progress, and it is getting better all the time.
So it's not perfect, but it's text searchable, right? So it's doing its best to turn what you say in the meeting into text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, compared to some of the other solutions out there, it does a fantastic job, but you may have to proofread them before you send them out. Someone says, I didn't say anything about a barn.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing too is recording view. This is something that is actually really important for people who may want to record the sessions, but may want the recording that gets sent back to cut out the thumbnails and the pictures of someone who is in the session. And a lot of those reasons are just for compliance purposes. They want to be able to collect the audio. They don't want the people's face to be shown on there. So if they have that, they can download it, they can share it. Most of the reasons are just compliance, whatever the specific organization's rules are on recording or specific state. Sometimes you can get around certain things if you record. Most of the time I always say too when I'm recording, hey, I'm going to be recording this, just letting you know, and then I just go into recording it. Usually I start the recording before I say I'm going to go into before I say I'm going to record. So I start recording, and then I say, hey, I'm going to be recording this session, just letting everyone know on this session that it is being recorded, and you will get a copy of it. You can also set it up inside the admin portal if you're an administrator, where it actually takes it out of the host's control and says, this meeting is recording, or recording in progress, something along those lines. So you can, if you need to, you can take it out of the user's hands and make it automatically announce that when you click record, which is another nice thing. And then as always, just make sure that you do click save after each one of these, updating them. If you do have any questions, please feel free to input them in the chat here, and we will answer them.
Yeah.
Not seeing any questions yet, but send them over.
That's okay. I think it's a good point for us to switch over into the second half of our our show. We've had our prepared content done. Now we're going to open up for general Q&A.
We have our first question. Joe is asking, if a meeting in my personal room runs overtime and I have guests waiting in the lobby, do I have to boot the current meeting attendees to admit the ones waiting in the lobby?
That's a great question. You don't have to. You can admit them. Sometimes I admit them and I just say, hey guys, I'm actually wrapping up with these guys here, and I'm just going to put you back in the lobby, but it shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes. And then I push them back into the lobby and they're like, oh yeah, no problem. Take your time. So great question.
Yeah, if you do want to boot the person out, like, hey Ben, I got another meeting here, and he still wants to keep talking, and I'm like, yep, but I really do have another meeting. All right, see ya. You do have the ability to right click on them and just say expel, which shoots that person out if you don't want your next meeting to see who you're in a meeting with currently. So
Yeah, and a lot of times what I do to be nicer is I just move them to the lobby so that it doesn't say you've been expelled from the meeting. And then once I end my meeting, then it ends their thing too, their session. They're not in the lobby, so they never know. But sometimes you'll get people who will just leave their computer open and in the WebEx session. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to move them to the lobby. And then when I end the session, it'll just end it for them too. They won't know.
Good. That's a good question. Cool. So we're officially in the second half here. Any Q&A about any topic, we're happy to answer. If we don't get too many, though, that's okay. We'll wrap and we'll see you guys next week. But we'll give it a minute here.
Yeah, even if it's unrelated to what we went over today, if it's related to WebEx, we can answer those questions as well.
This is the hardest part.
I know.
Yeah. Stay quiet. Keep dancing. Yeah, spin the plates, Ben. Cool. We are at 1:30, so we're trying to keep this at a half hour every time. We had a lot more prepared content this time. I think we're okay. We'll give you guys like 30 more seconds. If anybody has anything they're furiously typing, send it along. Otherwise, we'll switch into our wrap-up and start planning on next week's.
And Kim, if they want to get a hold of us after the session, they thought of something later, how can they get a hold of us?
You can email info@hungerford.tech, and we'll make sure either Greg, myself, or Ben respond right back to you. So that, or we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, all the social channels, Instagram too.
Cool. Yeah, we can't promise if you do a smoke signal that we will get back to you, but we'll try.
Pigeon carrier.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think we'll call it there. So let's jump into our wrap up. Today we talked about how to personalize your WebEx host settings. Lots of cool knobs that you can dial in to get those settings just like you want. If you haven't already purchased a virtual meeting platform, something that you can host on, and you're looking for a real chance to try out WebEx, we can give you guys a fully featured free trial. Just reach out to us. Or if you already have WebEx and you're just looking for some help getting it adopted, it's a social technology. It's not just tech. There's also that social aspect. We've done lots of adoption work. We'd be happy to work with you. Or if you just need someone to talk to, don't be shy. Reach out. We'd be happy to hear from you. That's our show for today. We'll see you guys next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.